Hello, this is Brian. Today's April 13th, 2019. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. And this is another episode of Spotlight on Trees. Today, I'm in the San Bernardino National Forest. I'm off of a little spur road just off of Forest Service Route 2N19, which is off that way. I just came down from 2N19. A short distance up from where I parked at the intersection of 2N19 and Green Valley Lake Road. Today's spotlight on trees is the venerable canyon live oak, Quercus chrysolepis. Now this is a tree that's basically a jack of many trades when it comes to trees. Just going to hike up this slope a little bit. We are here at about an elevation of 6,800 feet roughly. The trailhead where I parked was about 6,700. We're about 6,800 feet. And I came across this tree when I took the spur road off of 2N19. This is actually a really good example of canyon live oak. This is a tree that's hard to stereotype because it's not always a tree. It's often a shrub as well. But the canyon live oak is in the golden oak group, or the intermediate oak group, and that is the subgroup Protobalanus. Protobalanus generally features trees and shrubs whose acorns ripen in 2 growing seasons as opposed to 1 like the white oaks. The canyon live oak can be a small shrub or it can be a very large tree. Not so much in the sense of being extremely tall. The tallest specimens have been known to grow near 100 feet tall, but large in size in general. Like this tree right here. This is a multi-trunk specimen. Obviously it's been through disturbance. Who knows how long ago? It could have been decades, maybe even a century ago. Maybe this tree was single trunked. And what happens is these trees can burn in forest fires and then resprout from what they have here being called a root burl or a lignotuber. Canyon live oaks, like most oaks here in Southern California, have lignotubers, including the deciduous black oaks, like this one right here, and that one over there. They're still leafless. It's a little early for them to leaf out, but pretty much all of our oaks can resprout from fire damage and being cut down by sprouting from their roots. So apparently this one, a long time ago, did just that. So this is a canyon live oak this size is, at least in my experience, is not super common at this elevation. Usually when you get up above 6,500 feet, these usually get a lot smaller and a lot shrubbier. Even that canyon live oak there is pretty decent size for this elevation. This is a type of a tree you typically find at maybe 4,000 to 5,000 feet elevation, or roughly about that. Canyon live oak's bark, when it's mature, branches and trunks have kind of a mild furrowing, kind of a grayish, lightish brown, and it's quite a lovely tree. These trees are generally found from Baja California all the way up through huge chunk of Southern California. This is an extremely common tree here in Southern California. In fact, it's one of the most common trees above the 3,000 foot elevation. You can find them pretty much anywhere that has elevations above 2,000 and 3,000 feet. And you can find them through canyons and slopes of the Santa Ana Mountains in Orange County. You can find them throughout San Diego County. Riverside County up to San Jacinto, San Bernardino, especially the San Gabriels. The San Gabriels, there are places where canyon live oak is the dominant tree. And then you can find them all the way up into Oregon, and then you can find a population of them, I believe, in Arizona. I don't know about New Mexico, but some places this tree is the by far dominant forest species. It forms some decent woodlands and forests. Commonly associated at lower elevations here in Southern California with the big cone Douglas fir, Pseudotsuga macrocarpa. So if you have big cone Douglas fir, you can almost be guaranteed that you're going to see canyon live oak. Like I said, this specimen here is something you'd expect to see at much lower elevations than 6,800 feet. So to see one this large here is not super common, but it's always a pleasure. Now, some of the largest ones I have ever seen have been found at Palomar Mountain State Park in North San Diego County. That's a small little peninsular range called the Palomar Mountains. And going along the Doan Valley Trail, there are some gigantic specimens that are way bigger than this, and taller too. And like a lot of them are multi-trunk, probably due to disturbance decades and even centuries ago that caused the main stem to break and fall off, and for it to send out all these shoots here. There is one tree, I could not think of a better example of disturbance-free sprouting than one tree in the Angeles National Forest, if you're taking the old Mount Wilson Trail, right by Orchard Camp. There used to be an enormous canyon live oak there. It was a single trunk tree, mind you. It was a single trunk tree, and I was so excited and stoked to try to find that tree when I hiked up Mount Wilson. There's this place called Orchard Camp at just about 3,000 feet in elevation, and there's supposed to be a 1,500-year-old oak tree there. A canyon live oak, nonetheless. So I went and did that hike back in February, and I found the tree. However, it was just a 10-foot trunk. The top of it snapped off, and if you look down in the gully below it, you can see it was just a massive tree that broke off. However, the bottom of it was surrounded by stump sprouts. So there you go. That's a perfect example. One reason how these trees come to be like this is a stump sprout and a crown sprout from the root burl. Now, another thing to note about canyon live oak trees is the different foliage that can sometimes make diagnosis and identification tough. Now, canyon live oaks have multiple leaf shapes. The typical leaf is roughly like this, rounded, smooth-edged, but on juvenile sprouts, in other words, sprouts that come up from the trunk, shrubbier and lower growing specimens have a lot of their leaves, if not most to all of them, spiny. Sometimes very sharply so along the edges. Now, juvenile sprouts and smaller specimens with lower growth do that as a means of trying to deter as much herbivory as possible, meaning, you know, deer and other herbivores from eating their foliage. It's not always the case where you're going to find all spiny foliage down low. See, this one's got a mixture. So this one has a few teeth on it. This one has a few. This one's smooth. So canyon live oaks do have that quality. And again, they also have very morphological differences. Like this younger one's a little shrubbier, definitely a lot smaller. In fact, when you're in higher elevations above 7,000 and 8,000 feet, a lot of times the canyon live oaks are more shrubs. Or if you're in a very dry area. This area seems to be pretty mesic or moist. You know, considering you got sugar pine, coulter pine, Jeffrey pine, even some ponderosas. But a canyon live oak can be a small shrub or a quite large tree. Fortunately, one of the largest canyon live oaks in Palomar Mountain State Park fell over. If you're hiking along the Dome Valley Trail, going to the French Valley Trail, you'll see that tree. You'll know what I'm talking about. It was a tree that had a rock in between its roots. You'll see it's been uprooted. I'm going to show you a canyon live oak that's a little more typical of these elevations. A little more typical. Something like these. This is a canyon live oak that's a lot more of a shrubby type. Granted, this one might be quite young, and with great age, they may as well, very well get that size. But these evergreen oaks here, these are all canyon live oaks. So these are a little bit more typical of higher elevations. You can find them up to about possibly above 9,000 feet. I've seen them as high as 8,700 feet here in the San Bernardinos. And usually by then they're shrubby and their leaves are a lot more spiny tipped. Again, that's an adaptation to try to avoid from being chomped up by deer, because deer are quite plentiful in these mountains. So these are a little more typical of upper elevations and in canyon live oaks in general. They have to be in some pretty deep, moist areas for them to get quite large like that one did. So here you have it. Quercus chrysolepis, canyon live oak. One more side note. If you're hiking in Riverside County by 74 south of Garner Valley, you're going to see canyon live oak's close relative. That is the palmer oak, Quercus palmeri, which used to be labeled as a subspecies or variety of canyon live oak. It's a lot shrubbier, doesn't take on a very tall tree form at all, maybe up to about 20 feet. Some of them may be roughly about this size actually. This is about the size of a palmer oak, a typical palmer oak. And like the canyon live oak, they're very good stump sprouters. However, the leaves are very wavy and spine tipped. And one last note on the canyon live oak, and I'm going to segue into the palmer oak, is that canyon live oaks are also known as gold cup oaks. Their acorns usually have these large cups, and they've got the kind of golden scales on them. That's another reason why they're called gold cup oak. I'm trying to see if I could find a good example of an acorn cap, but I'm not seeing one right now. And their acorns can get quite large. This is spring, so you're not going to see a lot of acorns anymore. But their acorn cups are quite large. Here's one right here. Quite large. And this one's obviously decomposing, so you're not going to see the golden scales on it. And then the palmer oak, Quercus palmeri, you can tell it's related to the canyon live oak because they often have kind of slightly golden scale cups as well, but their acorns are slightly different shaped. Canyon live oaks are very round and big. Well, that's it. There you have it. Canyon live oak, Quercus chrysolepis. Next time I go near the Santa Rosa Mountains in southern foot of the San Jacintos, I'll try to do a spotlight on palmer oaks whenever I make it out that way. But thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next Spotlight of Trees.